Jive Hive Jeff from Two Hacks Garage. Well, if you saw the last video, we had good news and we had bad news. Good news is, well, we don't have piston to valve clearance issues like we thought we were going to have. The bad news is, because we're 10 thousandths out of the hole with the pistons and the 041 gaskets that I have for this, that is giving us less clearance than desired between the cylinder head and the piston. We need to be about 40 thousandths on those, and we're like 25,000, so no bueno. We're in the process of searching for those gaskets. It's becoming quite apparent the supply chain issues going on is making that extremely difficult. But enough of that bad news. We do have lots of lemons and lemonades. I mean, when this is all said and done, I'm going to have gallons of that to drink. But I did get my Clay Smith Engineering valve spring cups in. So the next step of this process is actually going to be assembling these valves, or assembling these cylinder heads. As you saw in the videos, we did get the new valves in from Ferrara. They're the 6000 series. The valve job hasn't been done. It's 3-angle valve job, just everything, the basics on that. And I have the Howard's springs. Now, if you saw in the other video that these were actually a different height than the absolute garbage ones that Speedmaster puts on these, along with those shims. And I did do a video showing how to measure for that valve spring height. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to assemble these heads. We're going to properly measure that in there with the valve spring height to this, and that's where these cups are going to come into play. So you'll see us measuring these cups and probably shimming up a little bit behind that. We just want to make sure that this is all going to have the proper valve spring height on there. Then from there, we'll go ahead and install the pushrod guides, which I got from Comp Cams, and we did have the Comp Cams valve stem seals. So yeah, I'm using quality products on this, and you know what, guys? I tell you what, let's just get to work. Let's get these heads assembled. Let's get them ready to go. So if and when I do find those elusive unicorn-esque head gaskets, we can actually get this engine put together. I did get good news also. The very expensive custom headers I had made for this car that I ordered about 5 months ago, because mind you, the 68 Thunderbird, nobody made a factory style header, anything for that. They are shipping on Monday. So that'll be a parts reveal. So that'll be some lemons and a lemonade. A long wait on that. But you know what, guys? Let's go ahead. Let's get these heads assembled, and let's just have fun doing it. We're going to turn somewhat of a bad day into a good day, and let's just go from there. See you soon. All right, so we're seeing what you're doing is like what we did in a previous video. We had measured valve spring height. But one thing that Jimmy did do just to get the valve stem up a bit, he did order different keepers that offset it by 50 thousandths. So that's going to provide us a little bit different stem height. So we have to go through and remeasure everything. But as you're seeing here with the new valve spring cups that we got from Clay Smith Engineering, they're 72 thousandths thickness. Our spring needs to be, you know, per Howard's cams at 1/800. And so we are using shims to go underneath the cup to get us where we need to be on that valve spring height. So right now it's just measuring, going back and forth and getting that right. The other part about this is we're not going to just do one and trust that the rest of these are right. we're going to take our time due to these being a Chinesium head, and we'll do that to every single one as we go through here. So it is going to be a little bit of a timely process, but we just want to make sure that we get these at the proper valve spring height. So that's just going to be a lot of measuring. So back at it. All right, so one thing we're doing right now is we're going to actually put the head back on the engine itself. And Jamie made a good point that there's a different lift on the intake and exhaust on these. So with raising everything up, what we're doing, the cups and getting the proper valve height, we're actually going to turn it over and we're going to make sure that the retainer actually doesn't hit the valve guide seal. It's just one of those little checks, obviously from years of experience, but that is what we're going to check real quick. Well, one cylinder head is done. So as you saw in that video, we went through, and just because of these are kind of a knockoff head, I refer to it as Chinesium. If you notice in here where all this is machined down and recessed, in a previous video we talked about getting the valve spring cups, which we did get in. But however, what we had to do is for proper valve spring height, we measured each one when you got that cup in there. The valve springs on this spec'd out to measure at 1.800. This cup was 7200ths, so we kind of had to make up that difference. And the shims that these came with, we did use underneath there to bring them up and also in there to get that proper height. But like I said, because of the machining on these type of heads, we just didn't measure one and go with the rest of it. We measured every single one of these through here. And believe it or not a single one was exactly the same on this. So another reason to, when you get these heads, to always check that. It's a lot more time consuming to go through each one of these valves to get proper valve spring height, shim it exactly where it needs to be, along with those cups. Like I said, that has to do with the actual machining down in here. It's recessed, not a single one of them was the same. So yeah, it was time consuming. You saw us go through a lot of that. I did go ahead and just put the push rod guide plates in place. They're just snug. They're not torqued down yet. I'm just putting them on there just because we don't have loose parts laying around. We'll torque those down once they're actually on the head. So yeah, that is one cylinder head done now. It took, better part of a couple hours to get right. And yeah, so kind of an overview, measure everything and shim it correctly. Put your valve seats in, put your retainers in, lube up your valves, make sure everything's clean, and put them together. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go take care of the other head. See you in a few. Well, you're probably wondering why we stopped halfway through the head. Well, to be honest with you, we ran out of the shims that these heads came with that were intended to use instead of a cup. Now, mind you, when we measured all this out from the beginning, I explained why it ended up needing to get the actual valve spring cups here. There's multiple reasons. It's in a previous video. But in order to get proper spring height on these when we were measuring through, we actually did use those factory shims underneath those cups to bring it up to the actual proper height. But to get to the point of why we ran out of the shims is pretty simple. I'm going to show you something here. So here's the factory spring that came with the heads versus the Howards. You can see there is quite a bit of height difference. So that's why we ran out of those shims. And, one thing, too, is these things are pretty bouncy, pretty much garbage. These Howards, they're not. They're pretty stiff. These are high quality. These are Chinesium. This is a no-no. So, in a nutshell, to kind of repeat what we did here, we went through on each and every single one of them. We measured valve spring height. And the reason we didn't take just one of them, as I explained, is because the machining down in here was not consistent. Every single valve that we have gone through, that has been different. So every single amount we've had to shim has been different. So that's another drawback on having these budget heads. You have to take the time and measure every single one of them to get your proper valve spring height. When you get a valve spring from like Howard's or whatever, they'll provide you that height of where it needs to be. Then from there, it is literally just measuring and calculating what you need. You did see earlier in the video when we went here to make sure that the retainer wasn't going to hit the valve seal. And you're probably wondering why we didn't do that on the intake side. Well, the exhaust side has more lift, so we didn't have to worry about that on the intake side. If that one's not going to hit, then that one's clearly not going to hit. So I was going to wait to, maybe do this final video like this with this complete, but you saw the other one complete. You've seen this done multiple times now. It is literally just a lot of math, paying attention and shimming this up correctly. Is it a lemons into lemonade moment? Kind of. Just got to get some valve spring spacers, which are pretty common, pretty affordable. Didn't want to have to do that, but it is what it is. And you can get them, unlike head gaskets right now. So we're going to go ahead and get those ordered up. Those will come in a couple days, and we'll get the rest of this assembled. With that being said, though, is I am going to do kind of what I refer to as a last cylinder head video. I did like part 1 and 2 of like initial reviews. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another one that kind of walks through everything and shows you what I've had to deal with and why and how we have remedied that. So overall, it's been a really long day. We've learned a lot on some of this stuff when it deals with these big block Fords, the clearances, especially from the chamber to the piston, as you saw in a previous video. But you know what? It's been a good day. Still trying to find head gaskets. That's kind of concerning just because of time frames, and we still have a lot of work to do with this car. But you know what? I'm not going to fret. I'm pretty confident we're going to find what we need and go from there. So with that, guys, I hope everybody has a good weekend, and it's spring, so get out there, enjoy the weather, have a good time. I'll see you tomorrow.